Good morning, everybody. This is Walk the Dog with Mortdog, and it is Tuesday, about 5:45 a.m. And yeah, it's just another day. Um, we've reached the end of another patch cycle. Tomorrow is the patch. Um, Definitely, the story of this patch has been Graves. Uh, we should do a study again, just kind of like Morgana before. We should do a study on Graves where you look at the patch notes, people were like, this Graves things won't change much. And it was a small change to Graves. Into a few days into the patch, it's like, there's starting to be this Graves comp. It like kind of is okay. It's kind of neat that there is a Graves comp. It's kind of wokage. Maybe it's like B tier, maybe low A tier. Into 2 weeks later, it's been less than 2 weeks, and now people are flaming because it's not getting nerfed. It's the least fun comp to fight, and Graves is the problem. And again, this is a case where it's like, we don't complain about the carry, or we shouldn't be complaining about the carry. We should be complaining about like the item that enabled him, right? Like Sterix was a big part of this. But just very fascinating, very fascinating. History will repeat itself, of course. But yeah, Graves went from totally unplayable to why aren't we nerfing him? And the other one is that he's a backline access champion, right? Like he can get to your backline, and when he does, players get frustrated. So very fascinating to see. And there are no direct Graves nerfs, but there are nerfs in the sense that like Sterix is getting nerfed and things like that. So we'll see. The other fun one worth talking about right now is that, man, we have so many 1-cost, 2-cost, and 3-cost champions, but there is a percentage of our audience. Let's use a fake number. We'll say it's 10%. 10% of our audience that if any of these reroll champions win lobbies, they get angry. They get really angry. And it's unfortunate because it's like we can't have every game be fast 8, fast 9. But man, when you have a patch note that like buffs 1 and 2 cost champions, they get very mad, and they let you know that they're very mad. So yeah, it's interesting. Despite all that, like, what are the strongest comps right now? Fast 8, 9 Dynamo and Amp, Strategist Amp, with that Samira cap and Annie, so it's so interesting. But anyway, that's kind of that. Tomorrow we do the thing where we wake up, check data, but I mean, not much is changing now, so it shouldn't be that big a deal. And then 14.7, which is the patch after this one, is the Worlds patch. It's the patch that Worlds will be played on. And pretty big deal for a lot of our competitors. This is the stuff that determines who goes into that new format, that new top tier format or whatever. So yeah, should be pretty interesting. One other thing before I start the questions. I know I've been teasing the curveball for a while. I will be able to talk about that right at the end of the month with the next patch rundown. So basically in 2 weeks, because the next patch rundown's in 2 weeks, I will be able to talk about that. So yeah, it is still happening, but yeah. So, okay, let's go to questions. I have 4 today. First one. Oh, wrong page. Aha. All right. Does overcomplexity ever come up? Are there ever ideas that we cut due to overcomplexity or change due to overcomplexity? That's the question. So the answer to this one is yes. Very frequently, in fact. Very, very frequently. A common thing that I have to do on the team, because this is also a common thing that like junior designers can really struggle with, is the best design is elegant design that is easily understandable. And the way you've kind of messed this up is if you look at the tooltip and it's like 4 paragraphs, right? Like clearly that's an issue. We definitely try to make sure that all of our designs are simple, elegant, intuitive, and things like that. That helps with approachability. And this is more and more true on like 1, 2, and 3 costs especially. You don't need a 1 cost. And this is something we go through during the design process. Is like, okay, a 1 cost should be cast a fireball that does damage. A 1 cost does not need to be cast a fireball that does damage, and if it crits, refund mana while also applying a burn, right? Like, you don't need all that, but there's this inherent nature of designers to try to prove how clever they are with their designs, and often the way they do this is they add things to the design. They just add on layers and layers. Like, wouldn't it be cool if it also did this and it also did this? It's just a natural human reaction. If you want to see this in its like fullest capacity, just watch a Mario Maker level. All Mario Maker levels is, wouldn't it be cool if we just jammed this jump into this jump? And it's not great design, and it's actually a pretty easy process. And I'm not going to say we're perfect, because there are definitely things, even after ship, you kind of look at it and you're like, did it need all this? But we try to live by a property we call like the 1 sentence rule, where it's like you should be able to describe the cool thing it does in a single sentence. If it takes more than 1 sentence, you've probably got it a little too complicated. Now, that being said, with 5 costs in particular, we tend to push the bar of what is allowed, right? Like, I think during development, if you looked at like Garen during our dev process is like, okay, this guy's a little complicated. But if you boil it down to, it's like, at one point during development, he used to give full emblems, not just the mods, which was too strong. But, it was like, play Garen, get emblems. That was kind of the 1 sentence pitch. It's like, okay, yeah, I get that. Right. And that's what I mean is like, even though Garen is complicated and opens up a lot of complicated scenarios, pretty easy to understand. You put him in, you get stuff. Now, by contrast, it was like, well, what does Kobuko do? Kobuko is, sorry, I just got a text message while I was walking. It's my sister's birthday, and my old brain spaced out, and I texted the wrong sister first. And so now the two of them are telling on each, like, the sister, it is actually her birthday. I was like, nope, Hannah tattled on you. God damn it. Anyway. If you look at like Kobuko before the rework, and it was like, well, what does Kobuko do? Well, it's like, well, he slaps, and those do damage, but he also has an AoE stun, but also he goes to phase 2, and like, it's a lot of things tacked on to each other, and it's not an inherently elegant design. Now, even post rework, I'm not going to claim he is like a ton better, but at least post rework, we got him down to Kobuko slaps and enters phase 2, and at least we got it kind of closer. But that 1 sentence design is really important. And if you want to critique TFT design, what you should do is look at any of the traits, any of the champions, and it's like, if you can't get it in 1 sentence, it might be too much, right? Let's take Street Demon. Well, Street Demon was KDA plus, and KDA was a great 1 trait sentence. There's glowing hexes. Stand in them. I can figure that out. Well, Street Demon is, there's glowing hexes, stand in them, but a couple of them are special hexes. Okay. It's fine. But you can see we're kind of losing the sauce. We're losing the elegance of the trait. So, now, obviously there are exceptions. Again, like Heartsteel, right? Heartsteel as well. Lose and earn hearts, and then lose more. Like, but how many hearts and how many, it gets kind of complicated. But the other thing too is that we often look at, excuse me, we look at our target audience for any trait. So for example, one of our key vertical origins, right, like your street demon, we try to keep those simple so that they're easy to understand and can be played by anybody. But something like our high risk trait, we tend to be a little more, well, it can be kind of complicated, so audience matters as well. But yeah, so it comes up all the time. Oftentimes I will ask people to cut part of the spell or reword part of the spell so that those tooltips can be nice. I have definitely shot things down. Sometimes the opposite is actually true. Next set, we have a 5 cost. And when we were first pitching the 5 cost, we had that one sentence thing. Hey, this champ is going to be special because they do this thing. And then I went to review it recently, and it was like, well, yeah, they technically do that one thing, but that one thing only accounts for about 10 to 20% of their spell. The rest of it is just bland. It's like, well, okay, guys, what happened? We lost the cool part. And so that's a part where it's like, why are they separated? Let's put it back together. Let's make sure that it does the one cool thing and it does the one cool thing well. Great, And you'll see it soon. It's definitely it's funny. The 5 cost itself is pretty basic, but the hook is like, never done that before. So, yeah. But yeah, so again, to your original question, does overcomplexity come into effect? Absolutely, all the time. It's one of the biggest things we look at. Tooltip digestibility, understandability. But again, if you want to judge us, one sentence rule. How does it work in one sentence? If you can't describe it in one sentence, we may have gone too far. So I'm trying to think about champions in the current set. I have to be careful because I think about 15 a little much right now. Especially right now in 15, I'm in the 4 and 5 cost space. So I'm trying to think of the 14 4 and 5 costs. It's like, well, Misfortune shoots a wave of bullets. Okay, she's fine. Hi, bunny. By the way, apparently my Discord thinks I'm a Disney princess because of all the woodland animals. So, yeah. But yeah, Misfortune shoots. Zeri shoots around making clones. Pretty simple. Hi, bunny. Okay, anyway, that's overcomplexity. It's a big deal. We try to fight it. I shoot down a lot of ideas that are too complicated. So, yeah. All right, what's the thought process behind which traits get emblems and which ones don't? Okay, this one's pretty easy. By default, let's say we're making a brand new set. It's time to make a brand new set. You're laying it all out here. You've got your traits, your origins, your classes. By default, they should all have an emblem. The assumption is every single trait will have an emblem. That is the assumption. Then you look at each trait's design and you go, okay, can we support this emblem from a dev side without like quadrupling the amount of work? And does the emblem create interesting situations? Now, the interesting situations bar is pretty low because classes in particular, it's like, well, what does Bruiser emblem do? It gives them a bunch of health. Woo! Is that an interesting situation? Not really. But like, that's the bar, right? Like a trait emblem bar, pretty low. And so most of the time, the traits generally do support that bar. Even boring stuff like Bastion and Vanguard. Now, thankfully, recently we've +1 to those trait emblems anyway, as they now have unique outputs on themselves. But even before that, it was sort of like, okay, everyone gets an emblem. Pretty simple. But let's take something like AMP. AMP required that every champion, because the way AMP works is there's basically this brand new stat, and it was a cool idea from the team where we're going to have this brand new stat that scales up in a different way so they can be multiplicative. And the way AMP champions work is they have this unique scalar that we can hopefully use to do cool things, like number of targets you get chain lightning by. That'd be a cool thing to scale. Great. Because we used to try to scale something like that with AP and it just didn't work. So we tried this new scaler. But in order to support an amp emblem, we would have to put that scaler on every champion and make sure that every champion does this in a satisfying way. So if you look at something like Seraphine, you'd have to come up with a unique scaler. And what would it do? You know, because you don't just want it to be another form of damage amp. That's not really that interesting. Now, there are solutions, right? If we had just said, okay, let's be lame, and if a champion doesn't have amp, it just becomes damage amp. That could have totally been fine, right? And in fact, there's an example in the set we kind of did this with, which was Syndicate. Syndicate, the team really wanted a Syndicate emblem so they could put a hat on anyone. But I think we also kind of screwed up, because has anyone ever put a hat on the emblem wearer? No. Right. It's the same with Cyberboss. Cyberboss was a trait that says, the core concept of the trait of Cyberboss was, if you're the Cyberboss, your spell is bigger, right? Bigger AoE, right? The Ziggs Bomb was bigger AoE. Initially, the Koboko ult was bigger AoE. Veigar does the AoE splash. Poppy throws the AoE. So, if we had a Cyberboss emblem, that would mean every spell now has to be able to do AoE, bigger ways. Totally fine for someone like Seraphine. We can support that. But now, what about somebody like Zeri? Every attack cleaves? Maybe. Right? But setting that up on our sides, creating every output to now have these like unique scalers, is a lot of work you're signing up for to support one emblem. And so because of that work cost, we end up going, okay, I think the answer here is we don't have an emblem, which can be less fun for sure, right? It sort of narrows down when you can play that composition, right? Amp comps don't have a lot of flexibility. You got to play the 5 amp champs. But overall, it makes the production actually achievable. And then to top it all off, there are other situations as well that we've been learning about. For example, the high-risk traits having emblems turned into the situation that to really reach their cap and balance around their cap, it had to be, well, you had the emblem, right? Because if you didn't have the emblem, you're just playing a weaker version of the comp. And this one's a really tricky one too, because there's a really good example right now that feels this way, and it's Golden Ox. Golden Ox with and without the emblem, drastically different. Thankfully, there's 4 Golden Ox now with the Graves comp that's kind of playable. But beforehand, like, man, again, we talk about augment stats, but the win rate of Golden Ox emblem is silly. It's silly. Trying to play Golden Ox without the emblem is significantly weaker. And the game would be easier to balance if Golden Ox emblem didn't exist, right? Whereas like Anima Squad emblem, not that transformative. That one actually has ended up in a pretty good spot. Or Street Demon emblem. They're not bad, but they help, but they're not like amazing. But Golden Ox emblem, holy, that thing is very transformative. And this is just another one of the complicated factors we have to take into account when we're creating the traits, is thinking about the output of how to balance those when they're interacting with each other. And it's a pretty challenging thing to do, because it's sort of like, well, the reason Golden Ox emblem is so good is because the base trait, you can't get 4-piece until you hit a 4 cost, so it gets to be a little more powerful, but the emblem allows you to hit that more powerful state earlier, like in stage 2, and then when you do, it's gold, so it snowballs, you know. But high-risk traits, same thing, except even more extreme, because like if you had a Cypher emblem, the amount of games you'd hit 5 Cypher early would increase dramatically, and we would have to balance around that, which would mean a normal Cypher game would actually be really disappointing and uninteresting. So sometimes we make the call to remove those emblems. Now, all of this is to say that I think we've actually kind of put ourselves in a weird situation around emblems, that I'm actually working with Roger on the learnings article today, and we're going to talk a little bit about like emblems and prismatic traits in there and how we're going to take a different approach next set. But the other thing too, I would say, is the audience dichotomy here, because like casual players love emblems, right? Getting emblems, getting prismatic traits, good stuff. The person asking this question likely is somebody who was like, I really like emblems. But, turn into one challenger stream and it's just like, oh, they got an emblem, blah, 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 blah. Better complain about something outside the norm. So, yeah. But again, the majority of our audience really likes emblems. We should really be supporting emblems. We try to as much as we can, but you can only do it so much. All right. When the team makes the set, do we think up all the compositions? And how many compositions get found without, that we didn't think of? And the answer is, I would say 95% of them, right? Some of them are easy, right? It's like, what's a composition that you're going to play Zeri around? Well, there's going to be a 7 Exotech or some rapid fire. Pretty straightforward. How do you play Brand? Well, Street Demon and Strategist and Techie. Pretty easy. If we didn't think of those, we'd be really bad at our job. And you can do that for a lot of the compositions. But there are exceptions. And the other thing is that even if you think of the composition, the balance can determine if that composition will be played or not, right? Let's take a hyperbolic example here, and let's say we buffed 3 Exotech. Just 3 Exotech, right? All of a sudden, the number of compositions at the end game that would be playing around 3 Exotech would go up pretty dramatically. And that those balance numbers can determine if a comp is viable or not by itself. Let's talk about a comp we didn't think of. A comp I don't think any of us looked at and were like, this is definitely going to be a meta comp, is Vexotech. I think when we were planning, Varus and Vex, it was like, well, you'll probably go more vertical executioner, or the two won't really be played together. It's like you'd go reroll Exotech, Mordekaiser, Varus, maybe throw in a Vex, but like didn't really think of it quite like that. But because of the power of 5 Exotech relative to 7 Exotech, that comp became viable. And I don't think it was on any of our like major sheets of what comps would be viable. So, but like another example that we clearly did think of was like Rapid Fire Renekton, right? Rapid Fire Renekton, we knew that would be a thing. It would just be a question of like, well, what's going to be the best front line? Is it going to be Sejuani? Is it going to be something else? But like, and if anything, part of it was like, hey, we had to keep buffing Rapid Fire so that this comp we'd planned could be viable, right? Which goes back to our goal of like every champion needs to have a composition that's viable around them. And the same is kind of true of emblems, right? It's like, if you get a Rapid Fire emblem, who's it going to be played on, right? If you get a Vanguard emblem, who's it going to be played on? Well, we kind of knew it would be Mordekaiser, and it is. It's not really that strong, though. It's like kind of strong. But all of a sudden, if we took Vanguard emblem and increased that health by 200, guess what? It'd be strong, So a lot of it is that the balance essentially enables or disables the compositions that could be possible to be possible, right? So that's why it takes a bit of a unison of the intended design and the numerical design to make sure those outputs can be real, right? 7 Exotech, currently not a comp. Part of it is due to the number of items. Part of it is due to the power. Part of it is the trait structure. But there's definitely some number where all of a sudden there's going to be some 7 Exotech comps. But yeah, so again, I think the actual answer is we usually get about 95% of them right. We also have the advantage that we can make compositions more viable. But there are definitely some where it's just like, Zeri and MF played together. Was that something we really thought would be viable? Maybe one or two people on the team did, but wouldn't have been on our top list of like comps. But cool to see. So, all right, last question. This weekend I was I did a stream where I was coached by Demacian Raptor, rank 1 at the time. Would you consider doing more streams like that? So here's what I'll say. I believe that in order to be relevant and entertaining on stream, you have to have variety. I do not think you can stay a successful streamer by just doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over and over. Now, there are exceptions to this, for sure. I think Soju is actually a pretty big exception. Although, I will say, at least Soju has the variety of trying to guess how long the stream will go. Is it a 24-hour stream? Is he going to flake? Who knows? Stay tuned. Find out. But I think the streamers that are like the mid-range to low-end streamers who kind of just like log in, play the game day in, day out, and they're like, why am I not growing? Shocker. You're not growing because it gets old. And so I like having variety where it's like, hey, this week we're going to do a little tournament, a Tom Kench tournament. And then next week we're going to stream like normal on PvE. And then next week I'm going to Smurf. And then next week I'm going to get coached by Raptor. And then next week, we're going to have some people from the dev team on, right? Like, that's the kind of stuff that keeps the stream entertaining. Next week we're going to do a challenge where you guys pick all the augments, or we're going to pick the lowest win rate augment was one I remember that was very fun. And so I actually have found that one of the things that hits my creative itch is trying to come up with those streams, because kind of like TFT, the novelty of what is going on the stream keeps it entertaining. And so I'm always kind of on the lookout for like, what's the next big thing I can like try? Because I think that's a good way to keep a stream going. That's kind of my hobby. And like I said, it lets me be creative. Now, all that being said, there are some there's been some challenges with me being a streamer recently. And so I had been asked for a while to maybe just kind of do the same thing for a while and not innovate. But in doing that, what I will say is I lost a little bit of the spark, because it's like, well, yeah, you're allowed to go on and stream and play the game like you always do, but not much else. It's like, okay, but even just as a creator, I'm getting a little bored of that. So, but it seems like, at least for now, we'll see how long it lasts. The pressure is off there, as long as I don't do anything stupid. So I definitely want to try to find more creative outlets on the stream so that people who are watching are entertained. Even something like this little podcast here, right? If I just do this and answer questions every day for a year, it'll get boring. And I mean, we can actually, hilariously enough, if you're somebody who cared about the viewership and you looked at the viewership of this podcast, each episode goes down, because it's sort of like, I get it. I don't need to watch all this, right? That's just the nature of creating content, which, like I said, doing this as a hobby has allowed me to understand a little bit better. So, TLDR, would I ever do anything like that again? Yeah. Different coaches, different styles, I'm sure would be fun. Yeah. So, and I'm not only that, but I want to do other stuff. I want to do stuff that keeps you guys guessing and entertained. So, yeah. Okay. There's the questions for the day. We're almost at half hour here, about 10 minutes away from home. Today is a very meaningful day, so I'm not going to get a lot done. It's playtest into... Oh yeah, we're playtesting Double Up today to hopefully ship something next patch that will fix the 3-star 4 cost problem. So finally getting at that, but we're doing a play test of that. That was one of those ones where Blue Velvet came to me and said, this needs to be fixed. I went, here are your 2 directions for solutions. He gave me the direction of this. And I went, okay, if that's the direction you want, here are the 4 options. I think it's this one. And he went, yeah, I think so too. Let's do that one. And so we're going to be testing that, making sure that works. And if so, that'll go out. That'll be good. So yeah, 15 play test, double up play test, and an afternoon of meetings and one-on-ones and various things. So not going to get a lot of work done, but is what it is. It's one of those days. And then my Switch 2 finally arrives. Thanks, Target. Switch 2 arrives. More Final Fantasy cards arriving soon, so those will be fun to play with. So, yeah. Okay. Otherwise, have a good day. Don't forget to post questions and upvote them. If you want me to answer things, I'm happy to talk about whatever you guys want to talk about. As you see, I'm a little open. Like, should I be telling you that we're playtesting double up changes? Maybe not. But it's fine. It's fine. So, okay. That's going to do it for me. Until next time, take it easy.